Ask Redditors. People who were at celebrative events during 9/11, for instance weddings or birthdays, what was the impact of 9/11 on the course of the event? Please subscribe, leave a like, comment and share the video to help the channel. My cousin was actually born as everything was happening, I think around 8:50, so my aunt and uncle are super happy just getting to meet their new bundle of joy when they learned the news. It definitely put a damper on the excitement. My birthday is 9/11, the 9th of November 1991. I was in 4th grade when it happened. My teacher was a lovely middle-aged lady and she was crying through the day, which I felt was a little odd. On top of that, a bunch of kids kept getting checked out of class. I secretly hoped that I would too, but it never happened. Found out about it when I got home and it was all over the news. Shocked was an understatement. The day of was not the celebration, but the day after. On the 11th, my mom was pregnant with my youngest brother, and her brother, my uncle, was supposed to be in the tower for a meeting. All the phone lines were down, and we could not find out where he was. Understandably worried, my mother ends up going into labor. On the 12th, we find out that my uncle was late to work, very out of character, and was safe. It turns out he had to stay home for a plumber, and when he tried to get to work, he couldn't get on the subway or find a taxi. Very focused, he just started walking towards the towers, frustrated that he was late. Someone actually stopped him on the street to tell him you can't go that way and explain what happened. His outlook on the day quickly changed. Later on the 12th, my baby brother was born, and it was my grandmother's 60th birthday as well. My grandmother would say that between finding her son was safe and her grandson being born, it was the best birthday ever. My birthday is 9/9, which was on a Sunday that year. For that birthday my family and I had went to a theme park, so I missed school on Monday. So, on that Tuesday, when I was back at school, I had brought cupcakes for everyone. It wasn't exactly a huge celebration or anything, but it was a festive mood. I remember my art teacher was kind of jokingly suggesting everyone sing me happy birthday, and they did. And then a principal walked in, and then they left the room for a minute. Then they rolled a TV in. I was in 6th grade, so I didn't understand the full depth of it, how horrific it was. At the time I was just annoyed my birthday was kind of spoiled. Not me, but my friend and her family were on vacation in Disney World. They were minding their own business, having a great day, until all of a sudden everyone was exiting the park in a rush. They asked a cast member what was happening, and he told them the news. Since no one knew the scope of what was happening, the parks were being evacuated in case they were the next target. We live pretty close to New York, so they spent the rest of the day panicked, calling everyone they've ever known in their hotel room to make sure everyone was okay. Not a celebration, but I was giving a tour of my university to potential students and their parents. We'd just gotten underway shortly before. So by this point I have them partway across campus, and this is our science building. It's nice, we have trees and other natural things here in the courtyard. And why are there all those TVs? And what are those people watching? Then when we walked up to one and saw the second plane hit, that was the end of whatever tour I was giving. It wasn't even conscious, I just didn't talk to any of them anymore, thinking just about what I was looking at, and then I wandered away to go home forgetting they were there. Was flying at the time. Never been more relieved to land at a foreign airport. I was on a field trip, science related, so we were outdoors in some random marsh area, or what I assumed to be marsh. IDK, I was in 5th grade. I lived in West Hartford, Connecticut at the time, and we were like a quarter of the way through the field trip when our guide got a bus from her walkie-talkie. She just kept saying over and over again, "You're not serious, you're kidding, oh my god, oh my god." She suddenly turns around with this frantic look on her face and tells us we have to get back on the bus now. We get on the bus and everyone is confused. Some teachers were crying, still had no idea why. The bus driver was Hispanic, and he was saying all this stuff in Spanish, messing with the rosary. We get back to school, they stuff the whole 5th grade class, made up of like 5 different homerooms, into a room, and put on the governess. We see teachers running around kids and parents in the hallways. It wasn't until later that the principal comes in and tells us exactly what happened and how we shouldn't tell the younger kids, and it's our responsibility to be strong for them. IDK. Parents eventually came to pick us up. My mom frantic and glued to the TV the rest of the night, trying to contact my dad, who was traveling at the time, either in Boston or in New York. Either way, they had shut down all major ways of transportation. He ended up having to take a ferry and beg to rent a car to get back. That day was just weird. My grandfather's birthday is September 11th, 1940. I remember my mom waking me up early to watch the news that morning, as she knew it was going to be a nice learning experience about the world. I remember trying to grasp my tiny 11-year-old mind around the fact that shit was going to get really real soon, when my doorbell rang. My grandpa stood at the door holding his own birthday cake with a goofy smile on his face. He had no idea yet it was an hour drive to our house. I didn't know what to do, so I just cried and gave him a hug. It sucked that his birthday was momentarily ruined by that event, but he played it off like a champ. I was prepping for a high school cross-country event in Missouri. I was very focused on the event, and we had heard something happened in New York, but we kinda blew it off, like it wasn't that big of a deal. Our parents started showing up for the morning races, and runners were leaving, and the coaches kept delaying the start of the races. There was a lot of talk amongst the runners and coaches, but us kids kept minimizing what was going on. There weren't any TVs at the course, and this was before kids had phones, so we really didn't know. Finally, my mom showed up and ran up to the coach, clearly very upset. She was scared, and I had no idea why. I was whisked away from the meet, and in the car my mom told me what was happening and cursing the coaches for not sending us home. I was pissed. I had trained for this meet and was trying to break my personal best so I could be varsity. When I finally saw what was happening on TV, I finally understood and accepted how big of a deal this was. Edit. Grandma. I've heard this story from my parents, and it's not as big as some of the others here, but I'll tell it. My dad had just gotten home from work. It was nighttime, because we are in Australia. Mum was caring for me and about to put me to bed, and dad had gotten tea, was eating it, and had been told he was getting a raise. Here he was, sat in front of the TV, watching a soap opera, while waiting for mum to be free, so he could tell her the big news about his raise. It cut to the news reports of the aftermath of a plane flying through one of the Trade Center buildings. My dad called my mum, and they both watched as a second one crashed through the other tower. Both were in shock for the rest of the night and unsure of what was going to happen. TL. Doctor, dad got a raise, was going to tell mum, but 9/11 happened and delayed it. I was in elementary school at the time and my aunt had just had my cousin. I was so excited I got to leave school early and have fast food for lunch. We went to the hospital to wait to see the baby, and all of the adults were in the waiting area crying and hovering over the TV. My dad kinda explained what was happening quietly and said that I shouldn't be scared, but when I see the new baby, please be excited for my aunt. It was my mother's first week back at work after maternity leave, but my sister had died 10 days after birth, so mom's maternity leave became bereavement. I was 5 and didn't remember the dates being so close together, but years later my mother told me she was convinced it was the end of the world. She couldn't fathom what horrible thing would happen next after losing a child and seeing the second plane hit on TV. Had a friend who was at a wedding in Hawaii, getting ready to come home. Most people say to him, "Oh, that must have been nice, a few extra days in Hawaii." To which he answered that it absolutely sucked. They were stuck on the tarmac and in and out of the airport for the greater part of the first day with no real clue what was going to happen. Then spent the next several days trapped on the island with no real options, overpriced hotel rooms, and no desire to relax and enjoy the vacation, while the rest of the mainland was possibly going to pot. I think I may have posted this elsewhere, but 9/11 is my twin little brother's birthday. They were turning 7 when the attack happened. My dad ended up getting stranded on a business trip several states away, so there was no way he was going to make it home that day. When we all got home from school, my mom unplugged every TV in the house and we sat down and had dinner and cake like everything was fine. They were old enough to know something very bad had happened, but young enough to not understand why, so my mom, sister, and I did everything we could to take their mind off of it. To this day 9/11 is not a somber date for us. The twins claimed it first, and nothing is going to take us away from celebrating the joy of having them in our lives. I worked at a theater as a house manager on that day. The theater catered to the retired set. It was my job that everyone had a nice experience. I would talk to the folks on the buses before they came in, mingle with them before the show, and at intermission and so on. They would come in on bus tours. This particular show celebrated the WWII era, so there was a mix of patriotic music, big band, that kind of thing. This was their era. I had always joked that someday I would be on a bus seeing a musical review about Nirvana and complaining about how loud it is. We had a 3 o'clock and a 7:30 show. This is East Coast USA time, so I was there in the hours after, not in the midst of it. In theater, the show must go on, right? I have several memories from that experience. 1. The folks who were coming to see the shows were the folks who fought WWII. I talked to as many of them as I could. They were devastated. They thought they fought the war that would ultimately keep us safe. This was Pearl Harbor all over again. 2. We did the 3 p.m. show. The performers couldn't get through the patriotic songs. It was too emotional. One woman in particular broke down on stage. They did the best they could. On the spot, they sang God Bless America in unison. It was a beautiful moment. Everyone stood and cried. 3. The performers walked out before the 7:30 show. Understandably, they just couldn't do it. It fell onto me to tell people arriving that it was cancelled. Most understood. Some people were fucking assholes about it. Edits, grammar, adding color and detail. Please subscribe, leave a like, comment and share the video to help the channel.